Welcome to DBW 2024 live from Amsterdam, and we're recording this podcast on the floor here at the Beurs van Berlage in Amsterdam. And with me today I have Chris Garwood. Chris, welcome to the show.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
Welcome to Amsterdam.
Thank you.
How are you so far? How are you enjoying DPW?
Loving DPW so far. I think what you guys set up a great event here. You've got some great sponsors, great attendees, and the energy is fantastic. I think we see a different group of people coming to DPW than you do to some of the other forums. And I'm loving that energy. And I really like the new innovation that's coming through.
Yeah.
And we're excited to be able to pilot some of that and pick up some connections to do that. So the leader of my digital garage in BP is Nick Wright. He's been just talking with Fair Market now.
Yeah.
And he's always on the lookout for new tech and new opportunities against problems that we've got. And I think DPW really brings us that forum to find the right players that can help us out. So it's great.
Great, that's kind. And we're only getting started, right? This is the first day one. We are post-lunch at the moment. Excellent. And I've seen Nick around, and great to hear it's working out so far. Any sessions or highlights of this morning, of today already?
Yeah, I love listening to Paul Polman, and he talked about the purpose of business, and he brought back into why do we do what we do and how we can support the whole ESG agenda. And he showed us really what personal leadership can do. And I often think I did an engineering degree, spent my first 5 years in automotive engineering, but then moved into procurement. And I asked myself, why am I in procurement? Why am I not doing something else?
Yeah.
And I just think we can live the purpose of a business. We can bring that through our supply chain, and we can do amazing good things. And I think Paul just kind of galvanizes that, shows amazing leadership in the space of what he can do. So I found that truly inspirational. It's pretty cool.
That's great to hear. And maybe you can introduce a bit about what you do at BP, right? It's a great job title. I love it. Includes even sustainability and strategy, and we talked about purpose and Paul Polman. But what's your daily life in BP?
Yeah, so coming up to 19 years in BP now. Through that, I've had some amazing diversity, and I can talk a bit about that in a second. But currently, I sit on the procurement leadership team, and I'm one of the key enabling teams, and that sits centrally across procurement. And so I've got 7 teams. One is contracting, so setting our contracting standards. The other is sustainability, around how do we bring sustainability into our supply chain. I've got the digital garage that Nick said, which is finding niche technology and opportunities through that. I've got analytics and insights, which is looking at external data, internal data, and then bringing those together to create insights. I lead the strategy and transformation program for procurement. And I've also got, it's like a process excellence team, but it's a team that's solving problems that we have in our day-to-day work. So some really fantastic breadth of teams. And our whole goal is to set the future of procurement for BP and then enable our teams to get there. So quite a fun portfolio.
I can imagine DPW today with all the innovations and the stuff like a candy store, right?
Exactly, we're loving it. Yeah, we wouldn't miss this.
Excellent. And it's not all about technology, right? It's also about the behaviors and the team and culture.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I look at what each of my team does, it's around, for their particular area, it's about setting the strategy. So where do we want to go? Then you're setting, what goals we want to achieve. And then it's about how you get it. And that's like working with the teams, educating the teams. But ideally, pretty much everything we do, we want underpinned by technology. A lot of what we do is all underpinned by that data, workflows, and that's where I think technology has a big part to play. So it all kind of comes together.
And are you a tech-savvy guy, or are you the leader of the pack?
I would say I'm tech-savvy, but lots to learn. I think I love the impact of technology. I love data. I love insights. I love looking forward. But I think, am I a programmer? I'm not a programmer. So we really rely on cool experts around us that can do it. And like we've got here today, some wicked companies that can really take a problem statement or a vision and turn it into something. So
cool. And what are the maybe key challenges that you face today in your work or with your team?
We think we really break our strategy into a number of areas, really. Procurement always has a place for safety and compliance. So
especially
we work in a
industry,
high risk industry.
Yes.
And also there's complexities within our supply chain. So that's our first thing. We always, want to get that right. We want to drive a more sustainable supply chain. So like everyone, we're developing with regulations developing, societal expectations developing, so there's an area. And then we've also got the more traditional side of procurement where you're looking at the value we can create, and ROI, or return on investment, is our kind of North Star there. What's the highest amount of value we can achieve, and how do we do that at the lowest possible cost? We then have kind of three big strategic themes underneath those outcomes. One is around, we call it category operational excellence, which is how can we make the buying experience work end to end? Because we know the experience for the users isn't always what it matches up to be. It certainly isn't what it is for when we're consumers externally. The second strategic theme or lever we're pulling is around differential partnerships. We think that the best way to deliver extraordinary outcomes is by partnering with our supply chain, and whether that be with a consortium of companies or one or two companies, to really look at big business outcomes and then work out how the supply chain can work that together. And then the third bit is around energizing our people. So we know we're on a journey. So we've moved lots of our operational activity into our business service centers. And now we're thinking, well, what does that mean for the rest of the people that are in procurement? What are the skills you need? What's the characteristics? Where do you drive your value? So it's a long answer to that question. Safety, risk and compliance, sustainability, getting great commercial value, and then make our processes work, change relationships with our suppliers, and then have a really motivated, more strategic procurement team.
I want to raise a couple of questions.
Yeah, please go for it.
Be making notes. On sustainability, and you mentioned the regulations, right?
Yeah.
And especially in Europe, or the German Supply Chain Act and stuff like that. And that's, well, basically changing every day, right?
It is.
How do you deal with that?
I think, like most companies, we're finding a way. I think generally everybody's supportive of the regulations and they're moving in the right way, increasing transparency in the supply chain, having a supply chain that can at a minimum can comply with laws, but ideally go further than that. So we're working on what our due diligence is with suppliers. For many years, we've been working on labour rights. I think what the Due Diligence Act is then driving you to go further and more broader in different parts of it. So we're learning things and we're managing our supply chain effectively. I think what we'd like as a corporate is if we can all step together with all customer groups stepping together, and then the impact on our supply chain will be an aggregate positive. I think today, if I put myself in the shoes of our suppliers, they'll get a survey from BP and they'll get a survey from many different companies, and they'll all be broadly similar because they're all satisfying the same regulation, but it will be hugely labor intensive, and that effort could be taken to improving the supply chain more. So what I'd like regulation to do is try and get as consistent as it can, as quick as it can, and then for us as industry to move together, because these aren't competitive advantages. This is just the right thing to do as part of society. So working our way through it, and we're looking at some digital tools around that can really help us with that as well.
Yeah, and it's a burden on both ends, right? You can throw bodies and Excel sheets on the data and being compliant, but you need a different solution there, right?
I think so. We've got 38,000 suppliers in BP, and very big suppliers with aggregated spend, but we've got this huge tail, and from a compliance perspective, everybody needs to hit that minimum. And I think that's where tech comes in play. If we can get tech working with regulation, working with industry, I think there's a great outcome that can be done efficiently.
And is this a technology challenge that you bring in your garage then?
Yeah, so Nick, we've got a number of different areas there, but let me start with the concept of our garage, really.
Sorry.
No.
No, this for the audience is also relevant.
Yeah, and I think
we talk about garages a lot, but what's the garage?
Yeah, exactly.
Chris, enlighten us.
We've got a fantastic technology team, and we've got a fantastic procurement transformation team that holds the core of our digital program. And they're really good for big systematic deployments, like your big ERP programs and that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. But what we found is that we weren't able to efficiently and effectively test new bits of technology. So that's when we set up our digital garage. It's got 3 people in it, but 4 people in it, but they're hugely motivated. They're really good in their space, but they've all come from procurement, so they know how to understand a problem statement and then bring it through. So our digital garage is really about testing, taking a problem statement, testing technology. We've got a tool called Scout, which all our suppliers sign up to, and then we can go out to them with problems. So when we brought that back into sustainability, we knew we needed more sustainability due diligence in our supply chain. So we went out with that as a problem. We then looked at a couple of providers. We then found one. We've then piloted it for 6 months. We're liking what we see, and now we're making a decision around how we can scale it further. And traditionally, we would have maybe taken 8 months to try and get the organization aligned, and then it would be a big program, and it would be multi-millions, and then it just hits a lot of inertia. Whereas what we've done here, we're working in typically 8-week cycles to test something, bring it in with some really clear hypothesis, then get some and then get the results. Sometimes we kill it off because we don't see the value, either for the tech or it might be us internally, and then make a decision to scale. And then when you've got that, you've got the numbers to back up any investments going further. So
I really like the concept of garages, right?
We're definitely not the first person to do it.
I know.
So we've stolen with pride.
I spent my years in corporate garages as well, and also with DPW, right, with a labs program or programs we run similar innovation challenges. When you made the decision, right, either you kill it or scale it or tweak it maybe sometimes, how do you bring it back to the organization? So from the garage to the mothership, basically.
For each project or each problem that we have, we make sure we have an executive sponsor from the procurement leadership team. And
buy-in?
So you've got buy-in, you've got someone who's articulated a problem, someone that's going to go and benefit from the problem. And they will then work with Nick's team and run the process. Then once you get to, and they'll help draft the hypothesis. Once you've then got to the end of that pilot and you come through, you've then got some data points to test against the hypothesis. We'll then come back to the leadership team, and typically that sponsor would then bring it in and say, right, this is what we found, this is what my recommendations. And then we'll see, does it align to where we are in a strategy? Do we think it's going to add value? And then we'll make that investment decision, which then goes back into the more annual cycle of processes. And then, so for this year, we're just working through the 25 investment plan now.
Yeah.
And a number of items from the garage are in that.
Yeah.
We'll get that decision made, and then it will flow into a wider scale deployment. So it's that balancing between innovative pace, but then you've also got to come back into the corporate structure eventually. Otherwise there's no money.
That's always the challenge with those programs. But very exciting that you're running it, right? And
we're loving it.
You have a team that's on it.
Do you know, one of the things as well is there's always hype with technology, isn't there? And there's also disillusionment that comes from that we say we're going to solve lots of problems with technology, but it takes a long time and the teams don't see it. What we've seen in the garage is people can see things quickly. They can play with stuff. They can have a conversation with tech. And so actually that it's energizing our purpose as an organization, which is really cool as well.
Yeah. And it's also very important, right, as an organization that you really understand the problem you're solving.
Yeah.
Because many times there's a problem statement which is not a problem.
Yeah.
And when you go into the problem and you understand, okay, actually this is our problem that we need to solve. Yeah. And then you have higher chance of solving the problem, of course, in the garage and with the technology and teams, and higher chance of success also for the leadership.
Agreed. Because if people come for a solution without a problem, there's always good energy around it, but eventually it suddenly doesn't get the money because it hasn't got the business case.
Again,
to
that's
it.
the candy,
Exactly. So we have to hold our discipline.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for sharing that one. You mentioned the buyer experience, right? And if you look at what we see here at DPW, new companies coming in, there's a new tech domain emerging, the intake and orchestration, for example. We see big teams running around here. Yeah. It's really exciting, both from US and EMEA markets. Yeah. What's your take on that?
I think the buying experience is ripe for transformation. And I think it varies. We've got quite a complex landscape. So I tackle this from two ways. So one is that we've got just under 50 ERP systems. So we've got
50.
So quite a complex landscape, and that's hard to build things on. So there's a big multi-year program that's going to fix that landscape. So we've got much fewer ERP systems, cleaner kind of foundation to build from, and I think that's going to give us the foundation to create that better buying experience. And I think procurement technology today wouldn't survive in a consumer world. You wouldn't tolerate the bureaucracy, you wouldn't tolerate the time, you wouldn't tolerate the number of times you have to pick up the phone. Yep. And we're really working on how we can change that buyer experience. So Nick's done some cool stuff with Fair Market, which is helping us get more efficient. We've we're working with a company called Axiom at the moment, which is around bringing how you can bring marketplaces and catalogs.
Yes,
in a
I
more,
know their solution.
Collective environment. So that I think is going to really enable that experience. But I think there's a huge amount to go. And we're looking at autonomous sourcing as well, which I think is going to be a good place to play. And if I put myself in the buyer or our customers, the requisitioner's shoes, I think they want to have as little interaction with procurement as possible, but they need what they want and they want it at the right price. But they want to be able to do that in a really efficient way. And I think it's quite exciting to see quite a number of technology providers in this
Finally,
space.
right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think our job is to make sure I'm seeing all of them are plugging into the ecosystem or the foundation, and I think that's going to be super important as we work it through. I don't know if I've answered your question there, but it's ripe for transformation, I think.
It is, right?
Yeah.
It is. So, and it's funny, a couple of years ago, companies came to us and asked for those type of solutions. Yeah. We said, well, there are not many out there yet. And I know there are companies that want to build stuff as well and build those layers. And I recall also all the sheets from all the parties that designed the layer on paper, right?
Yeah.
And now, a couple of years later...
It's amazing, yeah.
It's amazing, right? Yeah. And they come from outside the industry as well. I took the founders and CEOs of companies in this space, and they all come from outside of the industry or within the industry, and they said, I can't solve this pain point, this problem in my company, I start my own company. Yeah. And this is where innovation comes from.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's up to us as customers of that to, try and back a few horses and go for it. And I think you're finding a relationship you can develop from as well, because like you say, if they're new, they're going to have a great concept, but they're going to need more things to develop as well together. Cool. Yeah, cool.
Okay, third one, or maybe it was partnerships, right? Yeah. And you have these sourcing model frameworks, right? The more transactional versus relational, building those partnerships. And especially you talked around also, for example, data and sustainability. But in terms of partnerships and technology, is it something you can leverage through technology? Or are these partnerships more still the relational things you have with the suppliers, the key account management, the strategic account management? Yeah. Or is it a mix? What's your take here?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if I frame what we want to get out of partnerships is that we're looking at big business problems. So it may be, and I can give a couple of examples, we may want to drive a different revenue from our retail business, or we may need to bring an investment project and get hurdle rates for investments. And if we traditionally went to our supply chain and we went to supplier A, B, C, D, and then added it all up together, the aggregate of it doesn't hit the outcome we need. So we're flipping how we're going to the supply chain by describing an outcome we need, which may be a project hurdle rate that we need to get to or a level of revenue we need to get to. Yeah. And then we're bringing together suppliers that share that ambition and then bringing them together to solve that problem. So that's where we're using it. So we've used it in our traditional oil and gas businesses where we brought on projects much faster and a much lower cost. And that's been partnerships between 3 or 4 different companies. We've also used it then to drive different revenue and technology to then help how we satisfy customers' needs, and therefore that drives revenue. What we're seeing is the traditional procurement process, which is absolutely valid for, more commoditized sectors where you want to compete it, you want to get the right outcome.
Get a product, you pay for the product in time,
exactly.
By the way.
Yeah, so you want a nice efficient transaction, good for you as a customer, good for you as a supplier, but you don't need that long-term relationship.
Volume game.
But then flipping this round and changing it to an outcome, we're having to change how we work with the suppliers. So we're talking about what's the outcome, how we then, each part of the supply chain can then benefit from the outcome. So you're having a completely transparent, open book from a commercial perspective. Yeah. You've got cultural engagement from the top of the business all the way through to the teams that are working in it. So those different T-shirts that you wear become one T-shirt, which is the outcome of you need as a business. So we've got into the tens of projects in this area. So it's not the same volume that we have, but we think those 10 or so can be hugely impactful in terms of what we do. It's exciting. I think
very interesting.
I think only by making the supply chain work together, you can take the waste out of the system. You mentioned there, how does technology play its part? So we're not using technology for the partnership necessarily, but by creating a different business outcome, maybe a different tenure in the relationship, a supplier is then able to bring their technology to market and develop it with you. So how they're delivering the outcome, technology is often the answer, or it might be technology, it might be standardization on an industry level, it might be tweaking some specifications that can go. So there's a lot within that you can enable by a different relationship, because you've typically got tenure and you've got commitment and you've got an ability to work together.
Great to hear you're very cautious of that. It needs a different approach, right? And we're having to... And also from both sides, right? It's like getting married. You're in a relationship. Yeah. You should not forget, it's also long-term, right?
Totally.
Stuff can happen along the way as well.
And that's where investing loads in the culture is really important, so that actually you can take those bumps because you're looking at the longer-term perspective. Yeah, it is like a marriage is key, isn't it?
Thanks for sharing. If you look ahead, right, in the next couple of years, and we heard many talks already about AI, for example, and also moonshot thinking, a different mindset for the next years maybe. What excites you the most for the next 5 years?
Like AI has a massive part to play, but there is a lot of hype around this. So the way we're approaching AI is, fundamentally you need good data, you need good workflows, and then your AI can then build over that. We're then playing with AI in a few niche applications. So one looking at invoice and contract assessments, and we think that's going to be a huge source of value and efficiency. We're looking at AI in terms of large language models in summarizing contracts. We're looking at AI in terms of how we're authoring and creating contracts. And then we've also just got AI permeating all parts of our business with Copilot in terms of making everybody a little bit more efficient every day. So that's...
Are you already testing Copilots?
Yeah, we've got it, so cool. Everyone's got access, and it's good. I think you're seeing some people that are absolutely rocking it. I've got a guy in my team that...
he's high in the Copilot.
He's using high. He was doing a training session recently. He's used Copilot to ingest the presentation. It listens to the whole presentation, and then he just feeds the questions into the end, and he gets a Copilot. And so he's saying, I can spend more of my time in development and less of my time telling people what I think I've already told them. So you've got that extreme that are doing really well. You've then got a kind of middle group that are using it for, just summarizing contracts, documents, emails, and just getting a bit of efficiency. And then you've got some people that just aren't playing yet. And I think that's natural with all parts there.
How will it affect your organization?
How will AI?
Your team, your skills.
So I think fundamentally you've got different parts of procurement. So on our operational side of procurement, S2C, P2P, I think it can make those relationships or that work they do much more efficient. So I think we can get more repeatable outcome, take away the mundane roles and activity, and get more efficient. So that's on the S2C, P2P side of things. I think then when you look at the strategic category management, whether that's strategy or supply management, I think it's going to be enhanced by better data, better insights, and therefore you've got more relevant, more dynamic strategies that's coming through. And so how does that then affect our organization? I think we should become, back to that North Star return on investment, we should be delivering a lot more for a lot less, and we'll see our organization change structure. And with that, the skills and capabilities within it will evolve over time.
And with all those change ahead of us, but also the opportunities, is there anything that keeps you up at night?
I think risk is a big part to play. We've seen how complex supply chains are, and a well-worn story, but with COVID, it was that typically it wasn't people's tier 1s, tier 2s, it was down tier 3 and 4s, where they found a critical component in whatever they're manufacturing, and then they found that there was an issue with that, and therefore that's had a critical impact on their operations. So what keeps us up is around, do we understand those risks? Do we understand deeper into the supply chain? And have we got the resiliency set up to be able to be dynamic and manage that? And I think a lot of the supply chain shocks we've had over the last 4 years, people understand their supply chains better. And hopefully we're building in more resiliency for that. But I think the nature of a shock or black swan events or whatever people want to call it, or weather events, which is seeing more and more increasingly.
Yeah.
I think supply chain resilience is going to play a bigger part.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably key. I think from a personal purpose perspective, I really hope we're all collectively doing enough on sustainability. It's a complex space. What do you go after? But I hope collectively both society, governments and corporates are going far enough together to create the future that we all need. I've got children and I'd like them to have a good place to live, and their children too.
Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, what would I add more? I think the nature of procurement is changing, and I think where traditionally it's been quite a compliance-driven function. You come in, you've got rules, controls. I think we're changing from that into a key business lever. And that's what really keeps me in procurement, keeps me motivated, is that we are right at the front edge of the purpose of the company. Your company or any company is an extension of that whole supply chain, or supply chain is an extension of it. So I think, coming back into what excited me this morning is that session with Paul is around, I think we've got an awesome purpose. And I think if we can evolve with that, we'll get the seats at the best tables in the company. We'll be setting strategy, bringing opportunities, helping our societies, helping our company. And I think that's what really keeps me motivated about what we're doing. And I know when I talk to my team, that's what they love, and they love making that difference. So yeah, that's probably the key things.
Yeah. Exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here in our studio, DPW Amsterdam. And thank you for viewing, for listening to us, for being on the live stream, maybe even in Amsterdam. I hope to see you soon. Also, maybe in New York next year in Amsterdam. And please have a good second day as well.
Fantastic.
And also maybe a good drink this afternoon.
There you go.
On the conference party. And a pleasure having you here.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for putting on a great event. We're loving being part of it.